Hello, everyone, and welcome into Coach Greg Sports. This is the CFL DFS week number 12 video or live stream, depending on how you're looking at it, if you're watching live or on replay. But what I'll be doing in this video is we'll go through my cheat sheet or go through my sheet for CFL DFS for week number 12, go through all the relevant players and whether or not I would consider them in play for like GPP purposes, cash games, or kind of a pay down option, dart throw filler type of option overall. And as I'm going through that, I think this week I'll talk a little bit more if I'd be overweight or underweight to the field on them, as opposed to going over to DraftKings and kind of looking at it from that perspective. So hopefully you guys all enjoy that. If you have any other additional questions related to CFL DFS for week number 12, be sure to drop them in the live chat if you're watching live or down in the comments if you're watching on a replay. As always, if there's any major injury news, like throughout the week, I'll leave it down in the comments. Otherwise, this sheet will be updated on my Patreon to get access to that, but it will be updated as the coming days when we do get the injury reports for later today and Thursday and Friday as well. But without further ado, we'll get into kind of the breakdown for this week. So we start off with the Montreal Alouettes. Cody Fajardo, $10,300. I still have him listed as monitoring his injury status. He did practice in full on Tuesday. Looks like he'll be available for the game, which was kind of the case last week too as well. I have not seen whether or not he will be the starter this week. If he's the starter, he's in play. If he's not the starter, then Caleb Evans will be in play. And yeah, for some pretty good rushing upside for Caleb Evans if he ends up ultimately starting at $9,700. So both of them very much in play. Probably going to be right around the field on both of them, just kind of depending on who ultimately ends up being the starter. And then we get down to William Stanback at running back, $8,200. Consider him a GPP option this week. Pretty strong workload for him once again. If Caleb Evans is the starter, probably gets a little bit extra run as well. And then we just kind of move down past all the other running backs and the fullbacks. We get to Austin Mack to $11,400. Quite a bit of money, but he's been one of the most productive wide receivers in the entire CFL all season. So pretty strong play. Consider him a GPP. Can't really go cash game with that price tag at this point in time. Then we got Julian Grant still on IR. Not really too interested in most of these other guys. We do have Courtney Davis listed as doubtful due to an ankle injury, so we'll see who takes that spot for him. But I think it's pretty strong here. Tyler Snead's going to be in play once again as a GPP option, maybe even a cash game option at $6,800. Kind of looking like that wide receiver 2 option in this offense for them. Maybe we get a little bit more of Tyson Philippot taking out another step up at $4,400 or Hergy Mayala at $2,500. But those would just kind of be dart throws overall. Probably be overweight to Tyler Snead once again this week. Probably be in line with the field on Austin Mack. If you're playing either quarterback, you can stack either one of them with them pretty easily. And then we get down to the Alouettes defense at $4,000. They're kind of in play this week. It ultimately ends up who ends up starting for Winnipeg this week, obviously. We'll try to list this down in the comments too, whether Cody Fajardo or Caleb Evans is starting, and then whether Zach Collaros or Drew Brown ultimately ends starting. So we don't have any injury report for Collaros all week, so it looks like he's been fine. So I would assume that he ultimately ends up getting the start, but if he doesn't, very interested in this Montreal Alouettes defense. That's been pretty good this year. Pretty reasonable price tag at $4,000. If not, if it's Collaros, then, more of a contrarian option overall. Then for the Blue Bombers, we're getting down to Zach Collaros at $10,400. If he ultimately is the starter, he's a pretty good GPP option. If he's not, then, Drew Brown, not too interested in at $10,000. Brady Oliveira is all the way up to $10,200. So probably going to get underweight to him this week overall. If Drew Brown's the starter, probably a little bit better for him, but not really getting there too much this week, just in general. Greg McCray, we're not really getting to unless, like one of these wide receivers ultimately gets ruled out that we're not expecting. Johnny Augustine, really can't talk too much about him or the fullback. And then we get down to the wide receivers. So it's a pretty deep group once again. Jerry and Grant probably on IR once again this week. Kenny Lawler and Nick Dominski are my 2 favorite ones for GPP purposes. Neither are a cash game play at this point in time. If you want to do kind of a pay down option with Rasheed Bailey, there is some upside to be had there. And then Dalton Shane, obviously at $11,800, there's always strong upside there, but the price tag doesn't really necessitate playing him this week. Then the Blue Bombers defense, probably just going to be underweight to them this week. I do like Montreal as a team. There is some upside for the Blue Bombers defense, but a little bit more risky than I would like to take just in general. Then we get down to the second game. So we have Calgary here. Jake Mayer has been not very good at quarterback this year. This offense in general hasn't been that great, so really not too interested in him at $9,300. It'll be interesting to see if he holds on to the job for the rest of the season, because it's been a really disappointing season for him and this offense overall. When we move down to the running back position, we got Peyton Logan still on IR. The big news kind of this week is Kadeem Carey did not practice Monday or Tuesday due to a quad injury. If he is out this week, Dedrick Mills is going to look like a pretty interesting running back option. He would be a GPP option in that case, maybe even a cash game option at $7,900, because really the games that he's done well this year has been the games their offense has done better just in general as well, even though they do have a pretty deep wide receiver room. Not really too interested in any of the other running backs. If Carey ultimately does end up playing, safe to assume that's a kind of like 50-50 split once again, and I wouldn't be too interested in either one at that point in time. Excuse me. So we get down to wide receivers. Reggie Beggleton still has a decent upside at $9,000, but with Jake Mayer playing the way in this offense has been this year, not really too interested there. Still a GPP option. Tommy Lee Lewis is a GPP option if he ultimately ends up playing. He has not practiced yet this week due to a wrist injury. So $4,500 does have some upside. He's played pretty well on offense, but he's been really good as a punt returner as well. So a lot of different options there for him to get points, since you do get return yards in the CFL DFS. When we're looking at these other wide receivers, Trey Duke's been pretty solid so far this year, $6,900. If you want to throw him out there, you could. Luther hasn't done too much outside of one game this year. Clark Barnes is on IR. Cole Tucker been dealing with the foot issue, but he did practice in full both days this week. Marco Michel's actually played really well as of late, so you can consider him probably a GPP option as well. It's really just like one of these wide receivers is going to ultimately pay off, but kind of which one is it going to be, especially with Jake Mayer, performing as poorly as he has so far this season. And they also did get Markeith Ambles back last week. He's $3,100. So if you kind of want to do like a punt play, dart throw type option there, he could be viable for that at the very least. Their defense is $3,200. They did play pretty well versus Toronto last time out, so more like a punt play defense than anything, but really not getting there too much myself personally. Then we get down to Toronto. So the Argonauts, Chad Kelly's $11,200. His worst game of the season did come against Calgary, so there is something to be said about that. Still has really strong upside, though. And, they're coming off a bye week. This team is fresh. He's going to look pretty good overall. AJ Alouette, a running back, $9,200. Some strong upside with him. Once again, GPP option there. Not really too interested in any of the other running backs at this point in time. Wide receiver room, it's pretty wide open, as it kind of is all the time with Toronto just in general. Probably the most interesting camp was at $5,500 GPP option there. DeMonte Coxie should be back this week at $5,600. So if you want to go that direction, you could as well. He did practice in full on Monday and Tuesday due to his ankle injury, but should be back this week, I would assume. Devarius Daniels did have the big game last time out. Probably not chasing that too much at this point in time. If I'm playing Chad Kelly, probably going to be with Cam Phillips, maybe DeMonte Coxie. David Unger III is limited due to an ankle injury on Monday and Tuesday, so we'll monitor his status. And then for that Argonauts defense, kind of just a GPP option, maybe even a cash game option against Calgary at this point in time, since their offense has really sputtered so far this season, and Toronto has a pretty strong defense just in general. Then we move down to the Tiger Cats, Bo Levi Mitchell, Matthew Schultz, both on IR at this point in time once again. Assume Taylor Powell gets to start once again. If anything does majorly change with that, we'll leave it down and below. Not really too interested in him at this point in time. James Butler, a running back, $10,600. Still have some pretty strong interest in him. One of the better CFL running backs at this point in time is involved out of the backfield as well. So GPP option, maybe in cash game option if you want to roll them out in that regard. Tyreek McAllister, too much price tag at this point in time at $7,300. Not interested in him, not interested in the other running back or the fullback at this point in time. Wide receiver will be pretty interesting this week, because we did see Tim White have the big week last week, which I kind of expected a little bit since Terry Godwin was out. Terry Godwin did practice in full on Tuesday, so illness seems to be behind him. He should be back this week. They also did get Anthony Johnson back last week at $2,500. I think he's kind of an interesting paydown option at this point in time if you want to go that direction. Godwin's still going to be kind of interesting this week. I'll consider him a GPP play. And then Tim White and Duke Williams, if you want to mix and match them in a little bit, does make some sense ultimately there. If you really want to play Taylor Powell and mix in some of those wide receivers, you could do that. But not something I'm really getting too much myself, mainly just playing a kind of a one-off wide receiver. So probably going to be in line with the field on most of these guys just in general. Then we're going to keep moving down. So we got BC Lions. So I consider Vernon Adams Jr. $11,600 a cash game option at this point in time. So he does have a little bit of rushing upside. He's obviously throwing the ball a ton. He's putting up big numbers and big fantasy scores for DFS purposes as well. Don't really have too much concern with him. At running back, Taekwondo was out. GPP option there. He's pretty much the only running back they've been playing as of late, $9,000. Getting the full workload last week wasn't great, but there is still a strong upside to be had there if you want to go that direction. And then getting down to the wide receivers, mainly interested in Lucky Whitehead, Alexander Hollins, and Keon Hatcher once again this week. So I would have a decent amount of exposure, probably be overweight to all three of these. Obviously, it just kind of depends on the nature of your lineup. If you're playing Vernon Adams, you can play two of these guys together. If you're not playing Vernon Adams at quarterback, probably just be overweight and play like one of them in your lineups. But definitely have a lot of interest in all three of them. Lucky Whitehead scored 2 straight weeks. Alexander Hollins always seems to step up, whether it's Hatcher or Rhymes that's out. Rhymes is on the 6-game IR at this point in time. So do like all three of these options quite a bit this week. And then we got that Lions defense GPP option at $4,700, maybe even a cash game option against the Tiger Cats. As long as they can kind of stop James Butler and a couple of those wide receivers, should be a pretty good week for them once again. Nice little bounce back week for them overall, for the most part, should be. Then we move down to the Elks. I consider Trey Ford a cash game option at $9,500. Got some rushing upside to be had there. A little bit of passing upside. And didn't throw the ball too much last week, but still like him quite a bit. Then we get Kevin Brown at $8,100, kind of a GPP option if you really want to go there. Been a little bit better since Trey Ford's been out there at quarterback for this team overall. Moving down to the wide receivers, Eugene Lewis did return last week, $5,400, kind of a GPP option. Not anybody I'm going out of my way for. Probably in line with the field. If you're playing Trey Ford and you want to stack them together, definitely makes some sense there. Emmanuel Arcanau, consider him a paydown option once again, $2,500. Probably going to have a big week sooner rather than later. Stephen Dunbar did have the big week last week, so I consider him a GPP option. Probably be in line with the field on all these guys, maybe a little bit over the field on Emmanuel Arcanau at this point in time. Probably be underweight, maybe a little bit on Stephen Dunbar, since he did have that big 2-touchdown week. Kyron Moore, we're not too worried about. You really saw his role get decreased with Eugene Lewis returning to the lineup. Not really interested in Dylan Mitchell once again or any of these other wide receivers. That Elks defense, though, going against the Red Blacks, still would consider them a GPP kind of pay down option at defense. Maybe a little bit overweight to the field on them this week overall once again. When it comes down to the Red Blacks, Dustin Crum, $10,900, quite a bit of money there, has some rushing upside. It could be a favorable matchup for him. It could not be. It just kind of depends on how he ultimately ends up playing in this game. So I'm still going to leave him as a GPP option, probably be just in line with the field on him this week. Devontae Williams at running back, mainly just a kind of filler if you need somebody at that position at that price tag, but nothing else special or a little bit of a contrarian play. Not really too interested in the other running backs or the fullbacks at this point in time. For the wide receiver position, mainly interested in Justin Hardy once again at $8,500. If you're playing Dustin Crum, you can stack them together pretty easily. And then also Shaq Evans at $3,600, kind of a pay down option this week once again if you want to go there. Ackland did have the big week the last time out, so he's another guy that you could probably throw out there, but he's a guy that'll be underweight to the field on once again this week. And then that Red Blacks defense, probably ultimately in line with the field on them. If they can stop that Edmonton offense, which has been pretty easy to stop most of the season. If they can get some turnovers, should be a pretty favorable matchup for them overall. As long as they can stop that passing attack, which the Ottawa Red Blacks, their defensive backs, been a little bit hit or miss in some weeks there, but they've been pretty good at creating turnovers and sacks and everything else like that, though. So that's kind of where I'm at for this week. Quick little going back through it. We'll go back through it real quick. Alouettes comfortable with either quarterback this week, whether it's Caleb Evans or Cody Fajardo. We'll list down in the comments which one that ultimately ends up being. Feel free to stack them with Austin Mack, with Tyler Snead. Probably be in line with the field on the quarterbacks, maybe slightly overweight, just depending on who ultimately ends up starting. In line on the field on Austin Mack, overweight to the field on Tyler Snead. Probably be in line to the field with the Alouettes defense. Zach Collaros, if he ends up starting, I'll be in line with the field with him this week. Underweight to the field on Brady Oliveira. Then we get down to the wide receivers, probably just in line with the field on them for Winnipeg. If it's ultimately Zach Collaros getting the start, we'll probably stack a couple of them with him in the lineups that I do play with him together. Blue Bombers defense be underweight to the field on this week. Calgary, don't really want to get to Jake Mayer. Overweight to the field on Dedrick Mills if Kadeem Carey does end up getting ruled out for this week. So that is going to be a pretty popular one, though. Probably, I would expect. Not really too much on these wide receivers. If Tommy Lee Lewis plays, maybe it'll be a little bit overweight to him. Maybe a couple of dart throws on Keith Ambles this week. Maybe a couple on Mark and Michelle as well. We'll just have to see how that ultimately ends up playing out. Stampeders defense not really getting to. Chad Kelly probably in line with the field, maybe a little bit underweight, just based on the fact that Calgary was his worst game of the season. A little overweight to the field on AJ Alouette. If I'm playing Chad Kelly, I like stacking him with Coxie and Phillips once again. So I'll be a little bit overweight on Phillips, maybe a little bit overweight on Coxie this week as well. Argonauts defense probably overweight to them just because I don't really like that Stampeders offense at this point in time and kind of what Jake Meyer has done at the quarterback position. If I'm playing them, probably not playing Dedrick Mills in that lineup though. So we'll just make a note of that. Underweight to the field on Taylor Powell, as long as he's the starting quarterback. Overweight to the field on James Butler. Get a little bit of these wide receivers for the Tiger Cats once again, so probably ultimately in line with the field on a lot of them. Maybe a little bit overweight on Anthony Johnson if I want to take a shot there, or maybe a little bit overweight to the field on Terry Godwin in his return. Then with the Lions, like I said, overweight to the field on Vernon Adams, probably in line with the field on Tyquan Mazzell. A little bit overweight on these wide receivers, kind of mix and matching them. Two of them in a lineup that I am playing with Vernon Adams. And then that defense for them, probably overweight to the field once again versus the Tiger Cats. Probably overweight to the field on Trey Ford, like him as a potential cash game option. Probably in line with the field on Kevin Brown. And then probably in line with these receivers, maybe a little less Dunbar, a little bit more Emmanuel Arcano once again. Overweight to the field on the Elks defense. And then for the Red Blacks, like I said, Dustin Crum probably in line or slightly underweight to the field if I'm playing him. Probably stacking him with one of Justin Hardy or Shaq Evans this week, but not really going out of my way to do that for either one. So probably in line with the field or slightly underweight once again. And then that Red Blacks defense probably just ultimately in line with the field. But that's kind of where I'm at for CFL DFS for week number 12. If you guys have any additional questions whatsoever, feel free to drop them down in the comments and I'll get back to you as quickly as possible. You can also reach out to me on Twitter at Coach Craig Sport. Be more than happy to help you over there as well. Like I said, we don't know a lot of the information. Injury reports coming out, later today, tomorrow, and then Friday. So we'll be updating this sheet. If you're not already a member, be sure to subscribe on Patreon. Small monthly donation over there, and you'll get all the updated access. If there's anything else majorly that changed injury-wise to, prominent players or anything else like that, I'll leave that down in the comments. And then, when we get the quarterback news, Zach Collaros and Cody Fajardo, whether they're starting or not, I'll leave that down in the comments as well, just so you guys have that information at the very least. But with that being said, that's all that I do have at this point in time. Hopefully you guys all enjoyed. Hopefully you found this pretty informative. And then with that being said, if you are brand new to my channel, checking out for the very first time, please consider subscribing. Definitely would appreciate it. Helps the community. Helps to build the community that we're trying to build here at Coach Craig Sports, which is one that's truly for you, the viewers, helping you with your DFS. Right now, it's MLB DFS Monday through Friday. We got CFL DFS once a week, and then obviously the NFL season starting right around the corner. So we'll be doing some DFS content for that as well. But with that being said, that's all I do have at this point in time. Hopefully each and every one of you have a pretty good rest of your day, no matter which day you are watching this on. Right now it's Wednesday, but you could still be watching it tomorrow on Thursday or in some other days in the future for the smaller slate. Definitely do appreciate each and every one of you tuning in, whether you're watching live or a replay. Hopefully, once again, you have a great rest of your day, no matter what day you're watching on, and some pretty good luck in CFL DFS this weekend.